I'm broadcasting live on a few different channels. You have to forgive me. I have less time than I normally do today. So I'll try to do my best to make it very um, condensed. Sometimes my live will fall off. Um, that's usually because my battery dies. And so I got to be better at getting my battery charged. But we, I'm preparing to return back to Washington, D.C., to the United States Supreme Court. If you've been watching, you know that I had filed a writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court this last year. And I've been navigating the federal case in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is now at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I had the writ of certiorari at the United States Supreme Court. There was the writ of mandamus that is in Washington, D.C. Then there's also a civil action against sitting U.S. Congressman Mike Thompson that's active in Washington, D.C., and now Department of Health and Human Services. And so it's a lot to navigate, plus there was the appeal in the First District Court of Appeals in California. There is the cases in Napa County in two jurisdictions. And so you can imagine one person, not an attorney, having to navigate all this at one time. And that has not stopped me from preferring action when necessary. Like I said, the civil action against a sitting U.S. congressman that was initiated in February of 2026 after what transpired in the Cannon Building in Washington, D.C. Within 7 days, I preferred action in the nation's capital. It's in the D.C. court now. It is active. The individual, the defendant or respondent, has failed to defend or respond, and I have requested a default in that action. But navigating all of this at the same time, there's constraints. You have a limited bandwidth and acumen, and it's a learning process. And I do get better over time. I learn things to be more effective. I wish you guys could see my layout here. But I meet a lot of people. I've met a lot of folks along the journey here. And I've said this before. I was honored and privileged to meet people that flew to DC for different reasons that are in this path. And I was given some very precious information. They told me, be careful, John, because some of these people aren't who they say they are. And that's true. There are a lot of folks that are tethered to or augmented into the fold with people that are genuinely fighting for their parental rights very effectively, and their narrative is exactly what they say it is. But you get to meet people in person, and sometimes they want to work together. And the more you see, sometimes you realize that what they say is not everybody, but many folks are. They're a lot of smoke and mirrors, is what I would say. So um, I'm an adult. I have a duty to my son, and that is my duty. That is my most important duty in this. Each individual parent has a duty to their child more than anybody else's. And so the decisions I made to segue or invest energy into other people's cases and time, when those people were not what they said they were, and what they were doing was not what they said they were doing, when that became consequential, I had to accept that that was my fault, because my duty is to my son. And so I missed an important filing date with SCOTUS. When you get to the Supreme Court, it's a step up of of rules, the strictest rules of out of all the courts you're going to experience, and that depends on if you're IFP, if you're not IFP, but it's definitely different when you're navigating the United States Supreme Court, and for good reason. It's the United States Supreme Court, so they just can't have things all willy-nilly and laissez-faire. It's got to be tight, right? So when I was given instructions to cure, you're given 60 days. I cured. There was something else that needed to be done. I was given another 60 days. There were some snowstorms here. Like I said, I would ride with different people and go do different things because I wanted to fulfill my promise. And but it's still my choice. I made those choices, and I failed my son because I missed an important filing date, and it made that fatal. My writ of certiorari, which to me was the most important thing. Uh, and man, I was beating myself up. Man, I was I was disappointed in myself for many days. But I jumped back into the fold, and I figured out how to get back to SCOTUS, and so I'm back. Um, so I'm going to show you guys what it requires to file at the United States Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari. This time we're going to do the IFP, which is in form of papyrus. I'll show you guys, you got to put the packets together, and it's 10 packets plus one original that you must file, and everything that goes with it. You know, the affidavit for the IFP form and yada yada. Table of appendices, et cetera, et cetera. So these are already printed, they're ready to rock. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go to a 99-cent store or $1.25 store, whatever you want to call it, and get those little teeth clips, and I'll do the binding that way. You can get some manila folders and some rubber bands, but you got to have it put together and stacked. And so I'll show you guys when I put the packets together, and you'll be able to see how that works. This is 2 writs of certiorari right here. And right now, the California Supreme Court is chewing on another one. And yet again, oh man, I had missed another important date. It's so hard because it's a learning process. So when you file an appeal to the California Court of Appeals, whatever jurisdiction you're in, the first, the fourth, the fifth, whatever, you can check on the status of those cases. And I recommend checking daily. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I had preferred action in San Francisco because that's where the First District Court of Appeals is, and the Supreme Court. And so what I did was I went to the California Supreme Court. Initially, I filed writs of mandamus and writs of prohibition. I learned that from some of the wonderful folks I met here, Angelina out there in Missouri, and she actually filed her writs of certiorari. Her writs of mandamus and prohibition in her state, and then she took it through a writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court up there. When it got to the vote from the justices, they denied it, but still, I learned a lot from her. And so when I was sitting there just beating the heck out of myself mentally and more, I was like, wait a second, I need to file a writ of mandamus because there's layers of violations in my case, like layers. And so what I did was I filed a writ of mandamus and a writ of prohibition to the state Supreme Court. And I felt that I had the proper jurisdiction to go directly to them because of the significance of it. But what they did was they transferred it over to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals, just like that, denied it within a couple of days. Then you have to request review to your state Supreme Court, which I did. And then I received what's called the en banc. Remember I told you guys about the en banc? You got to have the en banc. What is this over here? There's an addendum. So the en banc is this. All right. So when you have a denial by the highest Supreme Court, by the highest court in your state, you then have proper jurisdiction to the United States Supreme Court, or at least to make the request. Some people were just going straight to SCOTUS and filing these mandamuses and what was her name? Barbara Stone and the other people with the was the affidavits and all that. Like they're just going straight to SCOTUS. And you can go through the process. The appellate process is a rough one because you have to do your opening brief. They have to do a responsive brief. And I wish I would have known what I know now. If I had the abilities that I have now from the outset, it's like it would I would have been moving much faster. But when things go bad, when you walk out of court that day and you're walking around like in shock and that mental fog from your rights just being obliterated, and you're like, wait a second, I came in here, I told the truth. Um, what the heck just happened here? What's going on? When it's like a shock that people are in a fog, and once you pop out of that, you're like, okay, let me see what can be done here, because they're like, well, what you're gonna want to do is, well, just contact an attorney or go down there to the self help center to legal aid, and you go down there and they're like, man, there's not much we could do for you, and you're like, okay, let me pick up the phone and hello, hello. Hi, I'm trying to see if I can file an appeal. Uh, Oh, $14,000, 20,000. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't have that kind of money. Hello, hello. So people are left to navigate this battle on their own. And so that's kind of how it started out. And then I met some people that were maybe good, maybe bad, but even some of the bad folks, or what I would determine to be less than good. So sometimes you can learn from them, but you got to hope that it's not too consequential, because some of these people that you may meet, they can be consequential because they can run people in circles. If you guys are commenting or anything, or hitting the like button, I apologize if I'm not acknowledging you. I can't see it right now because um, I'm on the restream, so all I can see is that screen. So if you are liking or supporting, I thank you. I cannot see it at all right now because of the way this functions. It's like you go live and then it uploads it to your platform later on. But I met some people that I learned from, and now I can move at a faster pace. And so you appeal, you go to the appellate court, you do your opening brief, they have their responsive brief, you get one more response to their response, and it's not really it's not another bite at the apple. It's more of an opportunity for you to reinforce your original appellate brief, right? If you're the appellate, it's different, obviously the other people will be the ones with the opening brief, you would respond, they get one more, and then you can request for oral arguments. But in the appeals court, just like the Supreme Court, a lot of people say, oh, it's a 1% chance or less than that. And I mean, or they'll say it's a 1 or 2% chance, but it's actually less than that when you factor in all the math, the other math. Like, even if you do IFP, you still have to pay for paper and ink and all this other stuff. And if you make mistakes, they send it back to you, but then you got to pay to ship it back up there. So I could drive up there in person and do it. And I had offered that to other people, that I would drive their stuff up there. I don't think people realize how big these packets have to be, how heavy that can be. Like I said, here's one set right here, another set. And so imagine if you go through all that, and then the Supreme Court sends you back your documentation saying, hey, you got to fix X, Y, and Z. So, oh man, you got to revisit that whole process and spend more money. So when you start to factor that math, that 1 to 2%, it gets smaller than that based on that, right? So the people that are doing it, despite that small number, can show other people, like, this is the bump in the road that I hit. You're going to want to make a right, not a left. You can do whatever, but this can happen if it does. And so many of us are navigating that step. But the writ of certiorari, once you have an en banc, that's the denial from your highest court in your state. You, under that, I think it's 1257 or 1267, you can then ask the United States Supreme Court whether they'll take it up. Now, both, like I was saying, the appellate court and the United States Supreme Court, there's an alternative that they can do that some people may not know. If your argument is airtight and it doesn't even require oral arguments, that it's so compelling, the United States Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, they have an ability to say that we don't even need to have oral arguments. We don't even need a responsive brief. This opening brief is airtight, infallible, and they can say, hey, send this back, remand, do this, do that, whatever. and the Supreme Court has that ability to do so as well. I can't remember the nomenclature. It's like three numbers, but they do quite a bit of those throughout the year. So it's another avenue of approach for those who seek redress at a higher court. Um, so, good gosh, the more and more I learn, what I learned earlier is that some of the things that they put in the documentation, it's actually a straight up crime, like no joke. Like California Penal Code 11167 subsection D and 1. And I have that in writing because these people actually put it in their documents. So they just acknowledged and put emails into the record that I can now use in the civil action that validates the premise of a 1983 and or a 1985. Because when it comes to these over predicated acts, and you got people all the time they're saying Rico, 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 la. People just talk on here sometimes and say stuff, but they don't tell people like what that requires or what's going to need to be done. And so one of the things that happened in my circumstance, for you guys that don't know, I am married to a CPS worker for the county of Napa. That CPS worker we moved to Napa from another county. In that county, we moved to Sonoma County first before Napa County. But that person, when I met them, I lived in Sonoma County. They lived in San Diego County. They had been arrested and charged with some very serious crimes. As a result, her parental rights were decimated. I moved from Sonoma to San Diego to stand with that person and try to help restore her parental rights. That should have been a red flag for me. Um, but still, you fall in love with who you fall in love with. Now that person is a CPS worker for the county of Napa, and when I went to them and asked them to safeguard the protections for my child, rather than do what they have a ministerial mandated duty to do, they got into self protection mode because somebody clearly either did do a background check and was like, we're going to hire this person, even though all this stuff in there, or somebody didn't do a background check because the person segued from a nonprofit that's well known in Napa. Not my problem, right? But unfortunately, what it seems to happen by when you read the internal emails, and those emails are mission critical for establishing those overt predicated acts and the connection between multiple people. This is a county that's doing this. These are county employees using a little email. And so the county of Napa was under investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So one of the people involved was the focal point of that. And at the same time, they were supposedly conducting an investigation for myself, which in reality, they were just trying to figure out how they could conceal the complexity of the circumstance rather than protecting my child. They were actively, one of them at least, was under investigation by the FBI. And a lot of times, I'm sure people are wondering, well, with all the complexity of your narrative, why are you still having to go through all this? And that should be a self answered question. We're all saying the same thing across the country. How are people getting away with all these things, but yet they still walk free or nothing's being done? The individual who I just told you, now the FBI came to his house, the FBI wiretapped his phone. There was compelling evidence. That guy is still walking around now. He's out buying properties and doing the whole nine yards. And that's the issue: is we're dealing with people that wield exceptional power. They're directly connected to the governor of the state. They're directly connected. They're all friends with very powerful people. So if you have to wonder why I have to fight so hard for something that just doesn't make no sense, despite having such a complicated, sophisticated narrative, you got the cartel taking the life of my first wife's father. I joined the army with somebody who would go to combat. I'd go to be a peacekeeper. That individual would join the sheriff's department in California, retire as a sergeant for the gang unit, yada yada. With all that, like you start adding up all the variables, it's like, dang, why in the heck am I having to navigate all this stuff? Well, I'm the people that are on the other side of this opposition, this battlefront, they're extremely strong and extremely powerful. Owned the winery that was trying to get that thing done, or starts buying up land around a project that he was going to vote yes or no on. Bought like 6 or 7 properties around there, created an LLC in his father-in-law's name. You know what I mean? I mean, just clear political corruption. Something was going on. It was obvious. And you can watch that on YouTube. I think I'll make a video for that. Um, oh man, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. So, excuse me. So the people that own that winery, and I'm not saying anything bad about them because they weren't implicated in any wrongdoing, but they are some of the financial backers, as are the owners of these wineries. Those owners are billionaires, not millionaires, but billionaires. And the other people that were financing this individual a lot of money were millionaires. So this is a cohesion of millionaires and billionaires, and they all produce wine. And when you produce wine, it's a very powerful thing. Driving in Napa, taking people around places, I realize how powerful it is to have a winery or to be in the wine industry. So much business is navigated and negotiated there. They bring people in, tier one clients or decision makers. They have the wine, they have the food and the whole environment. And it just like it sets the stage for a lot of stuff to be done. So you can imagine how powerful people are in Napa, that people from all over the world in the country, in DC and different places, they come into Napa, and everybody wants to have a friend that has a winery or is in that makes moves. Hell, hey, I sent you a bottle of that $500 wine. You're like, a case, Oh, you want to stay at our chateau? Will you bring over your friends and blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, trust me, I've been there and seen it. It's powerful. And so going up against that kind of power, I would later learn the issue that came to my attention first was about health and about safety of our children because of proximity to what is utilized to increase yield. That was the excuse and the justification given to me by the ag commissioner at the time, or the deputy ag commissioner was like, hey, at the end of the day, they yield more by using the things that have a higher toxicity. And I was like, well, you should put that in your ag report that, hey, although this puts people at a greater risk, it allows these people to make more. Put that in your ag report. Matter of fact, why don't you tell the people coming to buy the stuff that, hey, you're coming out here to buy it, and these people are more willing to take a risk to increase their bottom line. Yeah, say that to people. Don't just say it to the people who live here, because that's what I was like. Hey, man, do I need to like sell my house and move? And that's the first time I think I really pissed them off, because I was really pressing at it. I went to the health department, flew to Washington, D.C. with my son. I was asking a lot of questions, went to the oncology department, to the National Institute of Health. And, I was just like, hey, it's my son. If it doesn't matter what I feed them and do all this stuff, if people like right outside this window are spraying a whole bunch of toxic crap, if that's the case, or my kid's school right there, my son's school is 100% surrounded by vineyards. And I mean, like I did a video where I spit and I hit a vine. I was on the playground and I spit and I hit a vine. Just to show people how close it is. So you can imagine if on the weekend, on Friday, you take off, your kids take off for the weekend and they're spraying. And then on Monday, the kids show up and jump on the playground. They're running around. Or if the ground that the vineyards are in is level with the grass, the soccer field where the kids play, and they're spraying and it rains, right? Because what happens? There's no barrier. So that means stuff will seep down, same aquifer. And also, like I said, there's going to be some leaching going on. So it was reasonable questions. And, but I think that was probably the first time I was really aggravating people. I was putting videos on here, and I was actually being supportive of the vintners who were making more taking more steps and spending the money to transition over more to the Napa Green and CCOF and yada yada, because it's like that means that they care, hopefully, about the health of the people that live in the region as opposed to their bottom line. And I think that was like the first time I realized that people of power, they sure can get angry. So let's say, uh-oh, what is this? Oh, that's what I want. Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay. Oh, the Supreme Court of California. So I have two writs of certiorari. Right now, the state Supreme Court is chewing on one of my other most important. Like I said, I have layers of reversible errors per se and structural errors. That's a huge indicator that something ain't right, man. When appellate justices are completely looking past, and it's like the rebuttable presumption and musts and shalls, Family Code 2030. You got auxiliary. I mean, it's just they have gone out of their way to ensure like that there's an immovable object, and but they're like messing with my son and I, man. Like it's crazy. So my spouse is a CPS worker. I've been trying to divorce for this period of time, but not just any CPS worker, but a CPS worker, like I said, who was arrested in San Diego. So here's Napa. Let me see. Oh, we'll call this the Board of Supervisors. Napa Board of Supervisors. It's ran like a corporation, so they have a Board of Supervisors. And in Napa, they have an insurance policy, which I'll share with you guys more. But they've made it discretionary, meaning if there's harm done to the taxpayer or the citizen, they send it over to county council, and then county council can just reject it, right? And we have the district attorney's office. Allison Haley is the leader of the district attorney's office. Then we have the judicial bench, the court admin. And over here, we have the county admin, we'll call that, which is ran by the Board of Supervisors, county admin. Now, what we found is if somebody has an issue with the county, these can be weaponized to remove a liability, which is bizarre. And we have a lot of cases to support that narrative. Case in point, we have a lot of issues. The Board of Supervisors, Alfredo Pedroza was one of the members of the Board of Supervisors. Belio Ramos, Mintran left. He went back to Riverside. I think he came from Riverside, and he was the CEO of the county. And there was this fallout, he was looking elsewhere. There was a fallout between him and Belio Ramos and Alfredo Pedroza. The taxpayers had to pay $100,000 for an external investigator to come in. And Belly Ramos filed for a restraining order against a private citizen, falsely alleging that that citizen was this weaponization that we found. And we found private citizens that have came forward, much like Alfredo Pedroza. That was discovered by people just like yourself and me. Beth, God, what was her name? Beth Nelson, I think is her name. Yeah, she's a documentary lady, public advocate. She was one of the people that came forward about her concerns and about Alfredo Pedroza that led to the FBI investigation. So these are private citizens that can be targeted by the board of supervisors with the help of Allison Haley, and then the bench does their part. And we have cut and dry proof that the weaponization exists. There's individuals who have been targeted. There's an abuse of the PC 1368, which I've told you guys about. That's a challenge of competency. So when a litigant just will not capitulate and stands for their rights, we've had some people called into question as far as their competency. So when we're going to go back up to the Supreme Court, I'm gonna make some videos for you guys. We'll put the clips on here, the little teeth clips that's to bind it together, and you have to do 10 plus 1. And the packet has to include everything. Let me show y'all. Table of appendices. Let's, for example, here's one request for writ of certiorari. So in order to get here, you have to navigate a process. Can't just go skip to the front of the line like some of these yahoos were telling people that, yeah, you just go over here and somebody on TikTok told me that I could do this. And then they go whip up a bunch of other people, and the other people just automatically, like parakeets, just like, and then they tell these other people, and then them people are jumping on and telling people like as if it's fact and if it's true, and didn't even do no research or nothing. They just hear it from somebody, and then it just echoes down, and that's how it gets really destructive. Because instead of finding out, like, hey man, is there any merit to this, they just start telling everybody else. And then before you know it, a bunch of people that could have been spending time and energy doing something that will be effective, they were wasting a bunch of time and energy off this other stuff. And I hate to say it, but some of these people are profiting off of it. And then they're smart because they get other people to defend them. And so then other people don't want to believe that what they're telling them is a hill of beans. So whatever. So this is a petition for writ of certiorari. So we'll be going back to SCOTUS, dropping this off. So you got your cover page. You got to have your cover page. You got to have your address down here in the corner. Petition for writ of certiorari, United States Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court of the United States. My name, the petitioner, V. And this would be the Superior Court of California, County of Napa et al. The respondents on petition of writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court of California. So the reason why is you have to list the highest court in your state that you exhausted, would be the Supreme Court. Then they go to questions presented. And so the first page, you don't put the number down on the bottom here. This is your cover page. And so you'd start number 1 is going to be your second page, which, it's really your first. And this is just cover. And I'll show you guys how I do this. So then we go to questions presented. In this case, it's one question. If you can get your writ of certiorari down to one question, that's the ideal circumstance, just one. Some people will go off the rails and put 6 or 7. I think at the most, the Supreme Court wants to see 4. But if you can hammer it down to one question presented, one tight, clean one, you're good to go. whether due process permits state court system to compel a litigant to proceed in propria persona in overlapping family law proceedings while appointed counsel declares a doubt under Penal Code Section 1368 in a related criminal proceeding, then issues a warrant through that sequence and use that warrant to block further filings and review unless the litigant appears in person from another state to clear it. They worked very strategically to create obstacles. Their intent from the outset, when you listen to the audio, and those audios were achieved by, that was their own audio. That's why I'm kind of like, I'm just dumbfounded that they're like, oh, you can't do X, Y, and Z. Are you telling me that I can't assert the Americans with Disability Act? I filed official MC 410 requests to be able to record the proceedings. I made official ADA accommodation requests for a cart machine. And they told me I had to be in person for a cart machine. But when I did oral arguments at the Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals didn't tell me I needed to be in person for a cart machine. So I knew that they were full of hooey. And so now I put in all this documentation and they're like, oh no, we didn't deny yours. Yes, you did. I have it in writing where you said that I cannot have a cart machine unless I'm in person. It's crazy. It's just like, it's like, I'm not sitting on a red bicycle. Bro, it's a red bicycle, man. Look, here's a mirror. You're sitting on a red bicycle. I'm not sitting on a red bicycle. You're sitting on it's a tricycle and it's green. Bro, it's got two wheels and it's red as a cherry, man. That's a red bike with two wheels. It's a bicycle, not a tricycle. No, it's not. That's what it's like dealing with these people sometimes, man. They just like, no matter what, instead of being like, oh man, we've screwed that one up. Let's fix that. It's bananas. List of parties, related cases. Then you go to table of contents, opinions below. So the opinions below is going to be like your cases, like the Order of California Court of Appeal, First Appellate District, and the case number. It'll cite it, appears in the Appendix A as unpublished. The orders of the Supreme Court of California deny and review and stay in these other cases. So why that's important? If you do not request a stay, so when you request a stay, it's going to have to be on there, say stay requested, right? And then it's going to ask what you're asking to be stayed. The ruling, if it's a court hearing coming up or whatever, they want the specificity of that. And at least at the state Supreme Court, they want the judge's name, the judge's phone number, address, email, like address to the building, obviously not to the judge's house or whatever. And there's important things that must be present that you're going to have to learn. I mean, I guess one day I can make a video to show you all, but this is all stuff that you can learn. But I'll be honest with you, sometimes the AI doesn't get it right. They don't. But if you feed it what it needs, like download the handbook from the Supreme Court or your state Supreme Court or the state appeals court, and then put it in there and say, follow this to the letter. It'll save you a lot of time and energy. Then you got to list constitutional and statutory provisions involved. This petition involves the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. This petition also involves a Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. So imagine they use a family law circumstance and then properly segue it over into a criminal circumstance, but they still have you navigating in a family circumstance while they have you in the other one. And in California, I don't know if you know this, but in a civil proceeding, if you plead the Fifth Amendment in a civil, they give instructions to a jury that they can determine that you pleading the Fifth in a civil proceeding is an admission of guilt. So you can imagine if you're in a civil proceeding, allegedly, and then you're also in another proceeding where both can be weaponized. And that's what Napa County likes to do, is they made sure that I have no attorney, despite being entitled to one. Judge Victoria Wood completely rewrote the law and violated my rights on that. She falsely stated that there was no funds available, which was 100% a bullface, not trueness. Then she rewrote the law. She rewrote Family Code 2030, said stipulations to this, maybe a this, an early disbursement. That's not what Family Code 2030 says. So She violated the law and then rewrote it. That's a de novo standard of review. So when I went to the Court of Appeals, that's how it should have been applied. But they didn't want to do that because, again, a CPS worker is a county employee, but the county is the state. And Napa County in the state of California hiring a CPS worker that had their own kid taken away from them for sophisticated criminal conduct, that's not a good thing. So all they seemed to be concerned about was finding a way to conceal this. And that meant they had to just completely obliterate my rights. Because, I mean, if you go into a divorce proceeding and one party, because of their criminal conduct, straight up, man, she got her kid taken away because of her criminal actions. They're like trying to move heaven and earth to keep that out of the record or to ignore that. Like, hey, there's only one of us here who lost their parental rights because they were out committing crime. She didn't just abandon her kid. She abandoned her kid to go out there and commit crimes. And those crimes are what led to her losing her parental rights. How in the heck can the Court of Appeals, how can Tracy L. Brown, up at the presiding judge up at the First District Court of Appeals, how can she act like that doesn't matter? How could Joseph Solga and Robert Stamps and the rest of the Superior Court? Why? Because they've had her get on the stand and testify, and they've used her testimony to remove people's parental rights from them. And obviously somebody didn't do their job. That would be Christine Briseno, right? Because that's Christine Briseno's duty. So Christine Briseno, her best to work with Alfredo Laranaga, Becky Craig, and the rest of them to be like, we gotta shut this down. And so they've gone to great lengths to just violate the Constitution. And from what I found today, the law, because at least two people violated what's known as California Penal Code 1167 subsection D 1, and they did it in email. So look, this statute is absolute. No exceptions apply here. That's what it says. So agencies receiving or investigating the report, a prosecutor in a criminal case arising from the same abuse, appointed counsel in a 300 WIC proceeding, a licensing agency investigating out-of-home care abuse, the reporter themselves. So when I went to these people, to include Christine Briseno, and I sat down, I was instructed by the ombudsman to go speak to Jennifer Yasumoto, who's the director of Health and Human Services for Napa. Some dude came out and he says, "No, you can talk to me," took me in a place, and that's all confidential, as is anything else that I said. And by them disseminating that, because when I left, he went and emailed. I was in a completely different building. I was at Health and Human Services, which is it's a completely different building. And I was instructed to go there by the ombudsman of the state. And he then emails over to Alexis Vossmeyer. And by him doing that, he violated the law. It's a crime. It's punishable by 6 months. So then there's Christine Briseno, right? Christine Briseno put in her public, just like what Belia Ramos accused Deborah Dunham of doing. Christine Briseno, Susan B. Altman, the county council, and Cheryl Bratton, that's what they did. They put stuff that was confidential, violating that right there, in a public request for a workplace violence restraining order. I don't work for the county. So that's how far outside the box they were trying. And just it's readable in their emails that they were trying to figure out a way to put in place restraining orders. They hit up law enforcement. Law enforcement's like, this ain't a threat. And the dude that took his own life, the CEO of the Farm Bureau, when we found his public records request, through the attorney that represented him, that attorney made a public records request for all the communications between Belia Ramos and the now presiding judge, Scott Young. That's interesting. Interesting request, right? So we started making our own public records requests, and they released these internal emails. Then they sent some emails that and to each other. And then they contacted myself and this other person saying, you got to give us back those emails. They said this is attorney-client privilege, which it wasn't. What it was those emails were exculpatory, and now they're trying to park it under this attorney-client privilege. It's going into the federal record. They're violating federal law. It's going into the federal record, and what those emails show, that's the overt predicated acts. That's how you get the 1985. You can see them calling around and trying to say that this person's a threat when they're not. And then the county council is like, well, no, that's not a threat. That's just somebody that's not happy about something. But when you have those emails, that's the meat and the potatoes of proving that they're working in tandem together. They're calling around like, hey, we got to do this. They're emailing, whatever. But it's a crime. That dude, when I went to speak to Jennifer Yasumoto, that dude reaching out to Alexis Vossmeyer, he violated confidentiality right here under Penal Code 1167, subsection Delta 1. So that's going to be a focal point in DC in that issue, as well as the other. So getting those emails, but it's bizarre that county council, these other people, now they're trying to find a way. It was a public records request, just like the recordings of the hearings where they were lying. And when I was posting those, they would try to get them throttled down. Somebody was reporting the videos, right? But those were achieved by a public records request. I have the receipts of that. So I put the records request in, the court would give me a thumb drive. So those are going into the federal record. Everything's going into the federal record. And they hired this law firm that usually defends them. And I like I said, you try to talk to these people like with it's a waste of time, man. Like to try to present the human argument. All they care about is money. I've talked to William Hallisey out of Porter Scott several times, and he's just like the rest of them, man. Like it's just a waste of time to try to make the human argument. Immediately he gets off the phone, he's going to call his clients, and then they're going to try to work this plan out. Because when we told him, like, hey, man, have you seen the emails that your clients were clearly doing this? And then all of a sudden we get this notification where they're like, hey, we want these emails back. We're going to park those under client privilege. Nah, bro, they're going into the federal record. That's where they're going to stay. So state and your county little rules don't supersede federal. We received those and they're going into the federal record. That's what it is. And they actually threatened Stephanie Johnson. They sent her this notification that you have to destroy those. We didn't, man, shut up, man. Straight up, shut up. She's up in Washington and they're like threatening her and everything. That's what they do. We're filing them into the federal record because that, and for them to threaten, that's yet another crime because they're threatening the individual from moving forward with federal action against them. It's crazy. I don't get what, I mean, I get it, but I don't, So anyhow. Something I want to say to, I wish I could say to Allison Haley is you're a mom. She's a mom, man. I mean, she like was always posting pictures of her with their kids. So I would think that as a parent, that she would not want her kid taken into the circumstances that my child was taken into. If you go to her like little website and there's this Meet Allison Haley thing, and she gets up there and she's accepting this promotion to be the district attorney's society or club or something in the state of California, and she becomes the president, and she gives this speech about how I am the best, and she said it before too, I am the best person for this job because I know what it feels like because my daddy left us penniless because he was a asset forfeiture and we left us almost penniless on the side of the road. And she says she weeps that I understand people because, I loved an alcoholic. And I was like, hey, man, so did I. And I went to her to protect my kid. there's children that are no longer here because of an alcoholic mother that we know. And this person was determined to be a danger to her child, just like the other person was a danger to the child. Two children passed away at the same time because of an alcoholic DUI mother. So when I went to them, it was I had hoped all of them being parents would be like, dang, I could understand why this guy, but heck no, they didn't care about none of that. They just wanted to conceal um, the fact that they've been having somebody testify and take people's rights and send people to jail. And so they want to do the same thing to the father that asked them um, to protect his kid. But it does baffle me that these people are parents, man, and they project themselves out there. It's probably just, you know, talking points. But oh, there's Stephanie right there. Um, yeah, they're pressing a really dangerous edge at me because I'm caught somewhere in between. I got to deal with Allison Haley because she came after me. I didn't go mess with her. I was in DC minding my business, and she decided to prefer action against me. So I'm reacting to the harm that they've done. But I went there to go see Mike Thompson, right? And then Mike Thompson says that he got threatened, which is a farce. And man, I have volumes and volumes and volumes of video evidence. Whenever I called the sheriff and I was speaking to them, oh yeah, we got that. Everything. When I called Gavin Newsom's secretary, and he was just so apathetic about it. It's not my problem, not our problem. I'm like, hey man, can you help? All these people, and it's gonna take a lot of time and energy to transform those into videos, but we're gonna do it though. Um, and so Mike Thompson is parading around DC right now saying he's trying to pass a bill to protect whistleblowers. Whistle whistleblowers. Now, it baffles me because I'm a whistleblower. And then you got the gangsters over here, right? So then you got the gangsters. Um, actually, I should have put myself here in the middle. Oh, yeah. Me, the gangsters, right? So the irony that a district attorney of the county of Napa and the sheriff and all these people who they would never allow anybody to put their kid in harm's way seem to be perfectly comfortable and okay with somebody placing my child in proximity. And they go to the next level. They actually work together to try to minimize that, like the reality of that. So somebody came by force and took my first wife's father and these other people. And them people I would say would be over here in this room, right? And there's no negotiation with these people. You know, and I've met people in this dynamic that think that they understand it, but I really don't think that a lot of people do. California is saturated with people that they gravitate towards violence and they use violence as a weapon. So Allison Haley is supposed to be like a protector of the people, right? It always says that I represent the people, but these people represent themselves, and I'm over here trying to fight for my son. And what Allison Haley's doing is abusing the machinery of justice. They've abused the PC 1368, 3044. I mean, 1041. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And I never wanted to funk with them, man. I was just like, hey, um, my son and his safety for me is a serious issue. But now because of everything that's happened, I'm like caught in this like crazy paradox. Um, and so I'm left to navigate stuff like writs of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court. I think we're gonna go up there tomorrow. Um, and we'll file these. But again, I'm gonna put the packets together. I'm gonna go get the clamps and do my best to show you guys what I've learned. Um, if you are gonna pay the filing fee, you're gonna have to do true binding, which oh man, I even have a machine I showed you guys, and it like melts the things together. It's like $50. I got it off Amazon. Wade Reeves did a video. Tess Harmon, she did one, and I'm pretty sure I think Tess got docketed too. But that's a very expensive and hard process because the formatting and everything is so darn is difficult. So I will show you guys once I get the. I'll actually make a video of putting the packets together. And so, whereas before it took me months and months, almost a year to get to the Supreme Court, this is taking me probably a month. Um, and it's really sad though that the presiding justice and her team over there at the California First District Court of Appeals that they're doing this. It's like I'll tell you what. I'll validate the premise right now. Let's just do this. All right. If these are the gangsters and these are two litigants, right? We'll call this her, her and me. And oh, I should actually let me see. Let me change that. Her, me. And this is the argument I made to the appellate justices, to Tracy L. Brown and Skeeter and the other, whoever the other person was. I don't think it was Sweet. It might have been Sweet, but I explained to them, like, look, if these are homicidal, unalive, and this is a litigant, and this person's directly connected to these people, and then that person's connected to you. We talk about mens rea, we talk about credible threats. That's why I cited the Counterman versus Colorado argument. And some people, I think, didn't listen to oral arguments by the Supreme Court justices and why they ruled the way they did relative to credible threats. That's a protection measure for a lot of people out there. So that somebody, they don't want somebody to willy-nilly. It's a slippery slope that they can see that the danger of ruling the wrong way, that it just opens up the door for litigation abuse that transpires. And these people can just willy-nilly say, hey, I don't like this person, say you're in a lawsuit or they want to sue you, and they go weaponize just an accusation, and your constitutional rights are completely evaporated based on nothing. And so the Counterman versus Colorado argument really showcases that. But if this person was arrested with these people right here, and this person is married to this person, and this person says, hey, if we're going to go into a divorce proceeding, and if you bring up the fact that I was arrested by these people, I'm going to let them know. So then you add in the fact, you add in the math, what's your connection to these people? Well, if these people are responsible for unaliving somebody in your family, your neighbor, whatever, if you're a victim, or see what that does is it changes the math. So if this person threatened to use these people but doesn't know these people, then it's kind of like it's an empty threat, you know? But the fact that this person is directly connected to them, that's a credible threat. And so the fact that these people are responsible for doing harm to this person's family, right? And then this person's like, well, you know what? I know these people. But the bizarre thing is, this person's a straight up rat. I don't get it. This is me too, Pac-Man. I don't understand it, man. It's been confusing me from the whole thing. This person was arrested with gangsters, but then told on the gangsters, but then threatens to use the gangsters against this person, who was a victim that operated against these gangsters. Not specifically, not like directly, like because there's a myriad of gangsters. It's not like she was. It's not like this person operated against the people she was arrested. What if they're part of an organization or these groups that are all subservient? And then she was arrested with that group. And then, so if this person makes a threat to use these people against that person, that's a credible threat. If you remove all that, then the math changes. And the reason why I'm telling you guys that is that's part of my writ of mandamus to the to the Supreme Court in the state of California right now. Is like, when I went to oral arguments, you can hear them, man. They just completely brush that off. And if I read their tentative opinion and their unpublished opinion that the courts keep erroneously utilizing when you're not supposed to use an unpublished opinion, they said, "Oh, John says that that's what they said. They said John says that Jessica threatened him." Whoa, let me stop you there, Tracy L. Brown. What Tracy L. Brown should have said was, John says that Jessica threatened him. Then John went to law enforcement and John requested a restraining order at the advice of law enforcement, state and federal. And Jessica was arrested and lost her parental rights, right, to her child for criminal conduct here. Instead, they just said, oh, yeah, he says that she threatened him. So if they go, okay, John says this person threatened him. This person was arrested with these people. Those people are connected. You start adding that up. They completely left that out on purpose. That's what it says in the tentative opinion. I'm just quoting it. So I've relayed that back to the Supreme Court and to the federal court that they did that on purpose because they wanted to minimize the fact that I had filed for a restraining order first at the advice of law enforcement, and I'm on the victim side of the family of the people that were unalived. She's on the other side, so her making that threat is not a nothing burger; it's credible threat. And so the court completely and willfully, intentionally, Tracy L. Brown and Skeeter and the rest, they if you read it, it seems like just like wow, man, this is horrible. But they had over 1,000 pages of stuff to look at because there was the opening brief, the responsive brief, there was 565 pages of evidence from the record. So they saw the DOJ report, they saw everything. And so their tentative opinion or whatever completely factored that math out. So I've asked the Supreme Court of the state to look at it and be like, how did they get away with this? It's clear that they were willfully and intentionally trying to minimize this. So no, when a person threatens somebody to use people that they were previously arrested with, and those people are responsible for smoking the other person's family members, and that person operated for the United States against these kind of people, that's a credible threat on more than one layer. But the Court of Appeals, Tracy L. Brown, she don't want the people to see that. She don't want people to know that, but they're gonna. So my spouse was arrested with the people group responsible for smoking these people over here on this side. So when that person makes a threat that, oh, if you bring up any of my criminal past, I'm going to weaponize these people, that's a credible threat, right? And so that's part of the argument. That's one of the arguments that's in the mandamus right now. I filed 4. I screwed up and missed an important on another one. Like I said, I'm with legal Like they're just pulling me left and right, and this is all I can do is to fight back. But there's no excuses. There's no quarter to be given. Um, this individual, a CPS worker for the county of Napa, was straight up arrested and lost all of her parental rights because she was out there. She abandoned her kid to go run off with this dude, not to just run off with them, like follow him around. No, no. She ran off and she was slanging dope with this dude, and they both got arrested for it. And she lost her parental rights. So Allison Haley, the Napa County District Attorney, and all her subordinates, and the other people, and the court admin, and Christine Briseño, they want to hide this. So what they've done is they put me in a lethal conundrum here because now all these people know that I operated against these people, and that's how they wanted to play it. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, I might as well fight it out to the bitter end because they placed me on a collision course with these people on this side, and the person in the middle, she threatened to use them other people. But like I said, it's awkward because she done ratted on them people when she got out of jail. She got out of jail and found out that she got ripped off by the people that she was slinging that stuff with. So she goes and calls the police and tries to has them. That's what she does. One standard for her. Imagine you're out doing this stuff with these people, and then you get locked up, and instead of them trying to help you out, they take all your stuff, and then she gets out and she goes and tells on them. None of my business. But I'll tell you one thing. That's the caliber of the person that I'm having to deal with this crap. So if you threaten to sick people who unalive somebody's family members on them, that's a credible threat, especially if you were arrested for slinging dope with them, right? And Allison Haley, Napa County District Attorney, is trying to conceal all this. And that's the meat and the potatoes of it. No honor, no integrity. They tried to frame a peacekeeper who deployed to the Balkans to protect human life. I was going to tell you guys some stories too. Um, I know when some of y'all look at the pictures, you guys are going to see the kids going like this, and it just looks like kids throwing up peace signs. But in Kosovo, they're beefing with one another for real. And in a way, it's how you identify the two different groups, and that is usually the Albanians like that. They'll throw peace like this, but it really means like, this is the Albanians. When it's like the Serbs, they throw up like this. And so, because that's like the VJ, I think it's the VJ. The VJ was the army, but that was the, paramilitary and the army that was out doing them harm. So they'll actually fight over that, man. Like when the Albanians do that, and if they see that, like, like, that's how. But in the picture, you just see us standing next to kids, and and it looks like, oh my goodness, the kids are saying peace. They're making a point, and those people were like, they don't like each other, and I mean like it and don't like each other to the point where they were dispatching one another. So I was sent with other people to stop that. I was a NATO peacekeeper, and the travesty in Napa County includes these people trying to put me in a box that I'm not in. And my friends did pass away in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I wasn't there with them. And so they try to put me in this like dangerous combat veteran box when I'm not. And one of the people who tried to do it is actually a combat veteran, Mike Thompson, Congressman Mike Thompson, who's a Purple Heart recipient, decorated combat veteran. And so for him to play along with the scheme that the Napa County District Attorney is pushing, they're all trying to conceal the criminal history of this one person, which, I mean, uh, that's not protecting my child. And so the fact that they're doing it, and the fact that they wanted to make sure that these people on the far right, that means they're helping out organized crime and gangsters and stuff to target family members of people who have been unalived, right? Which would be me and the other people. I was in the army. When I deployed to Kosovo, my wife went and stayed with her friends, but my first wife, whose father would eventually be taken by force and unalived. And I don't like murderers, man. I don't think it's cool. Um, I know some people do it because like maybe somebody hurt their family member and they go do it, and it's like, you know, I mean, so I mean, under these circumstances, I can understand why some people behave in a certain way, but I don't advocate for unaliving, and there's some people who do it for selfish reasons. They're robbing people or doing whatever, and so the county of Napa has made their decision to align themselves with those kind of people and come after me and do harm to my son and I. And so all I can do, isn't that crazy, man? I'm using pieces of paper. Everything I'm doing is an act of nonviolence. I'm filing writs of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court, to the appellate court. They've taken everything that I own, my son. They're trying to take my life by making me putting me in this crazy conundrum with people that smoke people for shits and giggles. And I've responded with pieces of paper and making sure that everybody knows about it. So, and unfortunately, in Napa, I mean, shout out to people who do protect the people, because I know there is a certain caliber of the underbelly in the Napa County, but it's not like the big city. It's not like the South Side of Chicago or 8 Mile in Detroit or any of these other places where it's like for real, for real. And so for people who have never gone out into those places and really put themselves in harm's way, um, and to a place like Napa, but to go after somebody who I actually went out into real dangerous places and I did what I did there. Um, but for people that operate in these safe parameters, safer spaces to target people who actually do go out there and place themselves in harm's way, like those people that get on planes and fly to Ukraine and they're out there like it baffles me too. Like, dang, bro, like what the hell you guys doing out there? When I see these dudes running around the woods, um, yeah, it's a trip. Because we served with the Russians. Well, we were tasked to watch the Russians because NATO didn't necessarily trust the Russians because at first they were going to be adversarial. They said if NATO goes into Kosovo, that they were going to side with the Serbs and they was going to press back. But at the end of it, they joined up with the mission. But still, NATO didn't necessarily trust the Russians, so they tasked us with them, and we got to meet them. They're just regular people, like at the end of a stick too. And you could tell they didn't have a lot. We'd be out there, singing and dancing. We'd go do our missions and hang out in patrol or in the Russian sector, and we got to know the Russian soldiers. We didn't speak a lot of Russian. They didn't speak a lot of English, but our Lieutenant Stankovich, he spoke Russian. But it's like we didn't have to speak a lot to know that they were just trying to live life, and you could tell that they just follow orders. And so seeing this big old crazy conflict and seeing people fighting in trench warfare, it's hard to see because I know, having met some of these people, they're just doing what they have to do to feed their families. And now they're out in these crazy, you know, choices they didn't make. They're out there having to fight. Watch that trench warfare stuff that they're fighting, man. It just looks brutal. And house to house, things all like just decimated. Dang, it looks rough. So when I see people who aren't even Ukrainian or Russian getting on a plane and go over there, it's like, wow. Anyhow, I got to get back to work here. I have less than an hour, and I think I've exhausted that time. Tomorrow, please join us. We're going to the United States Supreme Court, folks. It's ramped up. I have been given a case number for HHS. Everything I do here is not braggadocio. I'm not saying like, "Ooh, this is brutal," but don't talk about it. Do it. Put one foot in front of the other, folks. I have no patience left for like I've met so many people that were just full of hot air, and they had these crackpot theories, and yeah, they wasted a lot of people's time. So I'm better off navigating and operating on myself. Oh, I see here. Here comes a person. I got to bounce, y'all. It's my turn to give up the room.